We're talking with Lorinda Swain on WBCK. You know her case quite well. It's been 15 years, start to finish, accused of a crime she didn't commit, in jail for 8 years, still the case hanging over her head until recently when the Supreme Court in Michigan decided she was entitled to a new trial, and in Calhoun County the prosecutor elected not to carry it any further based on a lot of work that was done, a lot of it by the Michigan Innocence Clinic at U of M. You know, when we talked with Dave from the Innocence Clinic, I asked him, is there a sense that when there is a case involving a child molestation that there is added pressure to get a conviction? And he said yes. I would imagine that doesn't surprise you.
Yeah.
Did you feel you were being railroaded?
Well, I knew I didn't do the crime, and but in all honesty, I as scared as I was when I was charged, I didn't think they could find somebody guilty that didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I had no clue.
So even as that case progressed and went further along, and you were in jail, the whole time you said, this couldn't be right. This isn't right.
You know, I was devastated always, and just so distraught and worried. But even with the sentence of 25 to 50 years and being found guilty, I was sure Ronnie would at some point tell the truth, pass a polygraph. And I was equally assured that as soon as the prosecution realized they had made a mistake and they had believed the liars and prosecuted the victim, mm-hmm. that they would do all they could to, get me out of the prison as fast as they could. It was, after my first appeal that I realized Ronnie had passed a polygraph, told the truth for a very long time. They didn't care. And so it was at that point that I felt much more fear and sure that I'm going to rot in here. I'm
mm-hmm.
never going to get justice.
You say they didn't care. Why? What gave you that impression?
Well, because Ronnie had passed a polygraph. The birth grandparents knew I didn't do it. The birth mother knew I didn't do it. The teachers from school knew I didn't do it. I would think it should have spoke volumes to him. University of Michigan Innocence Clinic had 4,500 applicants. I'm one of their first 5 that they accepted. They're very intelligent people. They don't just... The only way that they get involved, the criteria is you have to be innocent, and then the second criteria is they have to believe that they can help you. There's many people that have approached them that they believed possibly were innocent, but maybe because of they exhausted their appeals or whatever, they didn't think they could actually help them. So even maybe they believed they were innocent, but they couldn't take them as a client. Do you
mm-hmm.
understand what I'm saying?
Right. So, yeah, I think to characterize it this way, you felt that once it was seemingly obvious,
yes,
that everything would stop.
Right.
And it didn't.
No. And it seemed more hopeless and more helpless every day. So
if you could talk to that prosecutor today and say whatever you wanted to say, what would you say to them?
I got to talk to him.
You did?
The day that I went to the courthouse for my last tether appointment, after I knew that I had won at the Supreme Court. And I wanted to tell him, I forgive you. But I couldn't do it. I said to him, if good can come from bad, the thing I would ask you to have come good from this would be if in the future you're ever going to put someone in prison or try to put them in prison for 25 to 50 years, I'm asking you to please at least look that person in the eye and talk to them. The victim, the supposed victim, and the defendant. Because through the 15-year ordeal, none of the 3 prosecutors would ever meet me, talk to me. The one did talk to my sons after they told the truth, Judge Halsey.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, Susan Mladenoff never talked to Ronnie or me, and neither did Dave Gilbert. I don't know how you could say you investigated something and continue to try to put the person back in prison when you never spoke with the defendant or the victim, either one.
Mm-hmm.
You see my point?
Yeah. We're talking with Lorinda Swain. We'll be right back. Lorinda Swain is with us on WBCK. So have you had a chance at all to think about what's next for you? It's fairly recently that this cloud has finally been lifted. Have you had a chance to think?
Yes and no, I guess. Actually, I'm anxious to go back to work. And if anybody's listening and would like to give me a shot at a job, I'm a very hard worker. My dad said we have 6 kids, and he said, none of my kids would want to be caged, but out of the 6, I'm the least one that, I'm just so hyper and so active. I'm just excited about waking up every day and not being in fear, and even a bad day will be a great day. I don't know, and I kind of feel like if I made it through this, I can make it through anything.
Well, that makes tremendous sense. That's right. Do you think that, given, as Dave Moran has pointed out, the incidence of wrongful convictions out there, that there's a role for you somewhere in that circle to try and help change that?
I'm not sure. If the opportunity came up where I thought I could make a difference and help, then I would very definitely be interested in that. But I don't know whether that will ever materialize or not.
Yeah, I think that, for me and potentially for others who've listened to your story and hear that this is not an unusual situation. If you look at some of the statistics, that really is remarkable and signals that there's something that has to be done about that. And you'd probably be a poster child for that sentiment. In your life at this point, you talked about fear and being afraid because this, of course, was hanging over your head all this time. Do you think people who can't relate to the experience like that have fear unreasonably? When you talk about, you had legitimately had something to fear. The rest of us, our impressions of fear are different, aren't they?
I think probably they are. And quite honestly, it was terrible the whole 15 years. From the second I was accused to the trial to the first appeal to, 7 years into it. But the worst was waiting from after that Supreme Court hearing. I knew it was my last shot. In all honesty, I wasn't going back to prison or jail. They were not going to get another 30 seconds out of me. My parents understood it. We didn't talk about it a lot. My boyfriend understood it. We didn't talk about it a lot. But I was going to kill myself. One way or the other, I knew that by the end of July, I was going to be out of my misery. I feared that I was going to go to hell because I do think it does say in the Bible, and some pastors believe that. And I've talked to some that say not necessarily, that if you kill yourself, you'll go to hell. But it was, I know God's real, and I am a Christian, and I am going to go to heaven, thank God. But if I would have lost at that Supreme Court, I was going to kill myself, and I was going to accept going to hell because I would prefer to be in hell or dead as opposed to going back to prison. I was not going to go back. I wouldn't have took off, and, my parents had a $30,000 bond that they had signed. I wouldn't have had my parents lose their money, but I was not going back to prison or jail. So
there was no more fight.
Yes, I wasn't gonna hope for a federal appeal and go back to prison or even stay out on bond for another 2 years and carry. I wasn't doing it. My mind was made up. It's going to be over with in the end of July.
Well, and we're all very clear about what hell is supposed to be like, and what you're saying is this was worse.
Yes. when people get a life sentence, a death sentence, and they fight it, I always think to myself, like Lacey Peterson's husband got I think he has a death sentence, and I think he's like appealing, whatever. To me, why you'd want to just, be able to breathe and stay in a cell and potty when they tell you can, and I don't know.
Right.
I'd rather be dead myself, but.
That's an incredible thought. Ponder that for a moment. We'll take this break and come back with Lorinda Swain. It's our final segment on WBCK with Lorinda Swain, and we appreciate the time you've given us. So you had a support system in some of the folks whom you met in jail. They encouraged you. They helped you. They gave you strength. What else did? Obviously, you're a woman of faith, and so that must have had a role.
It's funny you say that. Faith, the actual Webster's
definition.
Yes, is faith is the substance of something hoped for and yet not seen. So I kept that on my refrigerator for quite a while.
I was going to say, if anybody's looked it up, it's probably you.
Because, the substance of something hoped for and yet not seen, yes, I had a lot of faith. But I wasn't Job. I always knew God was real. But in my eyes, John the Baptist is probably more holy than anybody other than Jesus. And I always thought to myself, he was in that jail cell thinking God was going to deliver him. He wasn't even scared. And the next thing, he had his head on a silver platter. Okay? And God doesn't always deliver innocent people. And I don't know why. And, I hope when I get to heaven I find out. But even though I knew God was real, I had constant fear because, some people maybe can convince themselves, I got faith, and believing that you have faith, then it's going to be how you say it is. But I didn't have faith like that. No.
Is there anybody that you have especially felt grateful for in this process?
So many people. Wow. Most of all, God, because if God wasn't willing, none of this would have happened. My parents, they came to visit. They took the phone calls. They paid 2 different attorneys. They fought. My dad said, I think my parents suffered as bad as I did, maybe worse.
Right.
My dad said, I can't enjoy a party. Lori's over there in a cage. I can go out golfing, but I can't enjoy myself. I think about her. That's all I can think about. The boys' grandparents, birth grandparents, Grandma Mary and Grandpa James. If it hadn't been for them and my parents, I think I would still be in those same shoes. Because they had the availability to get the kids to lie tests and be interviewed by the police and different, so on and so forth. Bridget McCormick and Dave Moran and all the students, University of Michigan. Wow. If it hadn't been for them, I would still be there. I'd like to thank them. I would like to thank Brad Edwards from Wood 8 and even Channel 3 and 17. I actually did have a lot of support for the kind of crime that I was accused of. I don't think it's typical to have as much support as I had. And I do appreciate that. And my son, of course, for telling the truth and standing up in front of the media and taking a lie test and seeing a forensic psychologist and that. My boyfriend that put up with me,
What about Ronnie? Do you talk to him regularly now?
I wouldn't say we talk regularly, real often, but I do talk to him, yes. About 3 months ago, I think, my 2 nephews died. And I've really, actually, since then, stayed more often in touch because it just made me realize how, you can be here today and not tonight. So,
well, we appreciate the time you've given us, Lorinda, and congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And the best of luck.
Thanks so much.